Hey guys, my name is Jane Stein. I'm the Managing Director of Loop Abroad, and I wanted to share with you my sort of top 10 things to avoid in your vet school personal statements or admission essays. Now, I want to caveat this by saying if you already submitted your essay and you did any of these 10 things, they're not deal breakers. The essay is not the most important part of your application. Also, this is just my opinion. But most people only get a chance to read their own admissions essay or maybe one or two from their friends when they're applying to vet school. And because I've been the director of Loop Abroad for now 11 years, I've had the chance to read hundreds and hundreds of students' admissions essays. And so I have a few things I see all the time that I would suggest that you skip, and maybe just some tips to help you get your essay as good as it can be. So remember that your goal in this essay is to show your admissions committee that you took the application seriously and you can follow directions, right? That's first. So we want to turn in something that's correct, that's well written, and that addresses the prompt. You want to show them that you understand what vet school and the veterinary profession entail. So you have some opportunities within the prompts to answer why you want to enter this profession, what aspects of it appeal to you, what you think you can bring to it, and all that is to show what you haven't been able to show in your application otherwise, that you understand this process you're entering and that you can be a successful part of it. And you also want to show them that you'll be a good member of their community and succeed there. So that's shown in other places in your application, it's shown in your interview, it's shown in your activities, but this is your chance to show anything you haven't been able to show somewhere else on your application. You don't really need to rehash all your hours and experiences from your resume here. You want to think of what have you not been able to show yet and that you have a chance to address within addressing these prompts. You don't get a lot of space. So your goal is to share information about you, your experience, your goals, and you want to skip anything that isn't unique to you and doesn't tell them about you. So some of the stuff I'm going to say to avoid, it doesn't mean it's bad things to say. It's just that given only 2,000 characters, which is about 300 to 400 words, it isn't informative about you. So in this case, it's worth skipping it. Okay, we're going to do it backwards. Starting with number 10, not answering the prompt, right? You don't need to teach the people reading this essay about the veterinary profession. You don't need to educate them about everything you've ever been interested in your life. You need to answer the question they asked you. So if the question they asked you is like, what attributes do you think are important in a veterinarian and how do you possess them? That's what your essay should address. And every sentence, or at least every pair of sentences, should address that prompt. If it doesn't, you know to cut it out of the essay. So one way to make sure you do that is to write a short answer first, like bullet points of what actually answers their question, and then you can elaborate on those things and make sure you're not going off on tangents. If your essay feels too long or you feel like it's a little loose, you can read back through later a couple sentences at a time and then read them and say, does this an answer to the prompt? Like, would this be an appropriate answer to the question? And if it's not, even if it's well written, it shouldn't be there. Number 9, talking about your childhood dog or horse or rabbit or cat. I know that a lot of students when they think about why they want to be veterinarians, they can remember a formative experience as a young person with a pet, right? Where that pet was really meaningful to you, or your neighbor had an animal that you thought should be cared for better, or you saw an animal get hit by a car and you wanted to help it, or you had a horse or a dog that you really bonded with and it was important to you and it made a strong connection. That's wonderful, and that's part of your personal story. But that doesn't really tell me anything about you as a vet school admissions committee that's helpful in making a decision about whether you should be at that vet school. So even though it's a nice story, and it may make us feel like a little connection to you. It's a very common story for people to include. Almost every admissions essay I read starts with a story about, like, when I was 6, I had a dog and she was my best friend and then she got sick. Okay, but it just doesn't tell us anything. It's not particularly unique and it doesn't help us know you as a future veterinarian. So I would skip that whole story and use that space to find things that are more unique, things that are more recent, things that are more special about you to share. Speaking of things that are not unique, number 8 is cliche phrases. So some examples of cliche phrases would be things like, I believe you can do anything you put your mind to, or you have to follow your heart, or I was put on this earth to help animals. Like sentences that get used over and over again in that exact same way really aren't informative about you individually. And so generally you want to avoid those. You don't have a lot of room. So if you said, something like that in your essay, does it ruin your chances of getting into vet school? No. But does it tell the committee anything about you? No. Number 7. So I see a lot of times people take this sort of personal tone and write things like, I spent a long time trying to come up with the answer to this question, or it's hard to put into words. It's hard to articulate just 2 or 3 things because there are so many parts of being a veterinarian that are important. Or I could never list all the things that are important to me or all the things I want to be. And I know these feel like a comfortable intro to the prompt, or maybe they feel like you're addressing how complex the situation is, but they aren't informative about you and they aren't helpful. And a good answer to like, what are the 3 most important attributes of a veterinarian isn't, there are so many important attributes of a veterinarian, I can't even list 3. Like, not good. So even if you feel that way, you can address that complexity in other sort of more mature ways without using 1 or 2 sentences for that kind of intro. So I would cut any language like that. Number 6 is phrasing opinions or other things that are going on in your essay as facts. So an example would be saying like, being a veterinarian is the hardest job on earth. Firstly, you aren't a veterinarian yet if you're applying to vet school, so you're probably not in a space to speak about the veterinary profession like an expert. Remember that the people reading your admissions essays are experts on the veterinary profession, and you, because you're not a veterinarian yet, are not. And so you don't want to present yourself like the expert on the veterinary profession anywhere in the essay because of your audience. So anytime you say something like that, it's the hardest job on earth, it's the most important thing, you're phrasing it as if that's a fact. And I think it's probably demonstrably untrue. I think being a veterinarian is a really hard profession, but we could probably all imagine a harder job, right? There are jobs that people really risk their personal safety and health and all kinds of things. Anytime you're saying like, no one believes, everyone knows, it's always true, it never something, that's probably incorrect. The absolutes like that are probably incorrect. And that makes you saying a false statement. When you're in a position where you're writing a false statement, even though we all know you don't mean actually always, never, but it can instinctively make people, the readers, feel like you aren't trustworthy or that you aren't able to see from other perspectives. And so those are words you kind of want to watch out for, those absolute words, and get rid of them. Number 5 would be sob stories or excuses. There is a section in your application to add additional explanation or information, and it's perfectly appropriate and great to list and include information on things that the veterinary admissions committee should take into account when they consider your application. Illnesses, family tragedies, personal events that affected your grades or caused some sort of difficulty that you've overcome. That's important information. It's good for them to know, and they're specifically asking for it. But these essays are not the place to explain why you haven't done something, why you haven't gotten to do it, why you haven't had an opportunity, why something hasn't been made available to you. You only get, like I said, 2,000 characters in each of these prompts. So you're looking at maybe 900 words total, maybe 1,000 words total, to show them why you'd be great at their school and why you'd be an asset to them. And that's not the place you want to include things you haven't done, things you're not good at, things you didn't get to do and sound like you're making excuses. So you want to watch for anything that sounds like that. Number 4 is more of a conceptual one. It's failing to connect your goals with your experience. So let's say that you grew up on a farm and you worked on a farm and you've worked with food animals and you've been in FFA and you've been in 4-H and you've had all this farm experience, like dairy experience, for example. And then when it says, what are your goals for the veterinary profession? You say like, I want to be a wildlife vet. Okay. There are plenty of people who grew up with farm experience who are interested in being a wildlife vet, but you have to make the connection between that experience and show you understand what a wildlife vet is and what part of it appeals to you. And there is a connection there. There are things that connect large animal experience with wildlife. There are things that connect farm experience with wildlife. So you just need to articulate what those are, and so that they think you've thought out your goals, you understand what they are, and you're prepared for them. Show that the profession you're interested in entering, you understand what it is. You don't have to be an expert in it or know everything about it, but make sure you've connected the past with the future in some way that makes sense, so that they think you're a qualified candidate for the thing you're interested in. Number 3 should be an obvious one: typos, spelling errors, non-full sentences, and punctuation mistakes. Punctuation actually has specific ways it's supposed to be used. I see a lot of em dashes and exclamation points and ellipses and things that like have a meaning used in the wrong way. So if you're using some sort of punctuation beyond commas and periods, you want to make sure you're using it correctly. It can be a little off-putting. I think avoiding exclamation points in a formal essay in general is a good idea. Typos and spelling errors are hard to find on your own, and so I really suggest having someone else read your essay. Not a veterinary expert, just another human person who can read it and say, what is this word supposed to mean, or this sentence doesn't make sense. If you don't want to have someone else read it, or you had someone else read it already, but you want a double check, reading it out loud, actually out loud, is a great way to catch those mistakes or sentences that sort of seem weird. You can also read it one sentence at a time, but starting at the end. That will help you avoid accidentally reading what you meant to write instead of what's actually written there. The last 2 are specific phrases or quotes that I see all the time, and I see them so often that I think you should just skip them, because I'm sure that every veterinary admissions committee also sees them all the time. One of those is, I want to be a voice for the voiceless. That doesn't tell us anything about you. It's not helpful, it's not informative, it's kind of a cliche, and it's literally in half of the veterinary admissions essays I've read. So I would just take that out. Take that phrase out. If you feel it's important to express that idea because you want to work in like animal activism or something where you actually are speaking on behalf of animals, you can express it in another way. But if it's just that you want to try to connect with your animal patients and treat them in a humane way and feel for them, you don't need that phrase. And the last one is that like Gandhi quote about you must be the change you wish to see in the world. First of all, I don't think that quote is appropriately attributed to Gandhi, but also like it doesn't tell us anything about you. It doesn't tell us anything about you. And it's in so many of these essays that please don't put a quote from anybody. We don't need the Will Rogers quote about, you know, veterinarians are the only doctors who treat all different species and their patients can't talk or whatever. We don't need quotes from anybody else. We only get 300 words or 350 words. They should be your words. And so if you were applying to vet school, it means you've done a lot of work and you've put a lot of time into committing to a profession and caring about these animals. And we want to hear about that. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear about your experience. We don't want to hear cliches or quotes. You're not trying to make an essay that would apply to everyone or that would be printable and beautiful. You're trying to tell your story and what's unique to you, and getting rid of all the cliches, all the quotes, all the stories about your childhood pet, and just getting into you as an adult, you know, preparing for your medical career, what you're passionate about, how that ties to your experience and your goals is a chance to really shine. So like I said, these are just my opinions. Feel free to disagree if you want to put any of these things in your essay. Well, not typos. I think we can all agree on that one. If you already turned in your essay and you think, oh no, I said I want to be the voice for the voiceless, like fine, so did a million other people. It's not a big deal. It won't hurt you. It just doesn't help you, and you have room to use that space for something else. I'll remind you that if you are a year out from applying to vet school and you're already thinking about essays, great. If you're looking for ways to add more veterinary hours, more research hours to get a type of experience you don't have yet, wildlife or exotics or large animal or small animal, you can do all those things with Loop Abroad in person. You can also do them all virtually. So if you're home right now because of COVID and you want to gain some experience, we have all kinds of virtual options. We have internships, we have courses online, so that you have a chance to get experience with elephants or big cats or zoo or marine aquatics. So if there's an area that you're missing that you're really interested in and want to learn more about, but you aren't sure how to do that in a time where you can't really get out and volunteer and interact in the same way, we have some wonderful virtual programs that can help you with all those things. And the tuition for those programs really helps to support a lot of our global partners who also can't have visitors right now and sort of earn funds in their typical way. So it's a win-win for everybody because you get a discounted price since everything's virtual, and they get some support that they desperately need, and you really get to learn from experts all around the world who are living and working with those animals every day, as well as our expert vets in the US and internationally. So hopefully we'll see you in a virtual program coming up. Even if not, I hope this information was helpful. I wish you all the best in your vet school admissions journey. It's a long journey, and for some people it takes a few years, but I think most people who've done it really find it worthwhile. And I hope that you feel encouraged in that, and maybe we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.